Elysium swirled around Sergeant Jack Miller as he lay motionless on the ridge. 6 hours he had been there, not moving, barely blinking. The alien sun beat down on his back, but Jack didn't feel it. His focus was complete. Through his scope, he watched the strange movements of the Krell scouts 2 miles away. Something was different about them today. Jack had spent enough time studying the insectoid aliens to know when their patterns changed. These weren't random patrols. They were searching for something. Hunting. Jack slowly reached for his comm unit. Base, this is Miller. The bugs are acting strange. Request permission to fall back to better position. The response came quickly. Negative. Miller, hold your position. Command wants eyes on that sector. Jack frowned. Command had been making these calls for weeks now. Bad calls. His squad had started with 12 Marines. Now they were down to 9. Roger that, he replied, his voice betraying no emotion. Jack resumed his watch, counting his breaths as he had been taught in sniper school 15 years ago. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Slow. Controlled. Patient. His spotter, Corporal Allison Gray, lay beside him, equally still. They're moving differently, she whispered. Jack nodded slightly. Command doesn't want to hear it. They never do. Allison replied. Her background in xenobiology made her observations valuable, but the brass rarely listened. 3 more hours passed. The twin moons of Elysium began to rise when Jack's comm unit crackled with static. All units, fall back to base immediately. Repeat, fall back to base. Jack's instincts screamed danger. The command came too late, too sudden. He scanned the horizon with his scope and saw movement everywhere. The Krell were already surrounding their position, closing in from all sides. Move now, Jack whispered urgently to Allison. Back route through the canyon. They slid backward off the ridge and began their quick descent. The rest of their patrol was half a mile away, already moving toward the extraction point. Jack's comm unit buzzed with panicked chatter. Other squads were encountering Krell forces everywhere. Jack and Allison reached the canyon floor just as the first screeches of the Krell filled the air. They moved quickly through the narrow passage, weapons ready. They've never coordinated like this before, Allison said between breaths. This isn't random. The sound of gunfire erupted ahead. Jack grabbed Allison's arm and pulled her behind a large boulder just as Private Sam Winters came stumbling around the corner, blood streaming from a gash in his leg. Sarge, he gasped. They got the others. Some new kind of Krell. Bigger, smarter. Jack pulled the young Marine down just as a wave of plasma fire blazed over their heads. He peeked around the edge of the boulder and fired 3 precise shots. 3 Krell warriors fell. We need to move, Jack said calmly. The relay station is our best bet. Reinforced walls, good sight lines. They made their way through the canyon, Jack taking point while Allison helped Winters limp along. The communications relay station was 2 miles away, built into the side of a cliff. If they could reach it, they might have a chance. Halfway there, they encountered more Krell. Jack took them down methodically, each shot finding its mark. His patience in lining up each target was legendary among the Marines. He never rushed, never wasted ammunition. By the time they reached the relay station, Winters could barely stand. Inside, Jack secured the doors while Allison tended to the private's wound. Jack checked his comm unit. Nothing but static. He tried the station's equipment with the same result. They were cut off. How long until extraction? Allison asked, her hands covered in Winters' blood. Jack checked his tactical pad. 72 hours minimum. That's if they can even get to us. Jack moved through the relay station with quiet efficiency. The building was small but sturdy, built to withstand the harsh weather of Elysium rather than alien attacks. Still, its thick walls and limited entry points made it defensible. He checked each window, noting lines of sight and potential weak spots. Outside, the night was alive with clicking sounds as more Krell gathered. Jack had seen enough combat to know they were preparing, not attacking. That gave him time. In the main room, Allison had managed to stop Winter's bleeding. The young private lay on a makeshift bed, his face pale, but his breathing steady. "How is he?" Jack asked, setting his rifle against the wall. "The wound is deep," Allison said. "I've done what I can, but he needs real medical attention." Jack nodded and began emptying his pockets and pack. He laid out his remaining supplies on a table: 3 protein bars, a canteen of water, medical supplies, extra ammunition, and his personal items. From a side pocket, he pulled out a small metal box. Inside was a worn photo of a lake surrounded by pine trees. Allison watched him quietly. "Is that home?" "Northern Minnesota," Jack replied. "Little place called Minor Lake. Family has a cabin there." "Never figured you for the cabin type." Jack almost smiled. "There's a spot on the North Shore. You can sit there all day, never see another person. Just you and the water." He closed the box. Good place to learn patience. He put the box away and moved to the station's systems. Most were fried or offline, but the emergency power still worked. Jack activated the outer motion sensors and connected them to his tactical pad. "Get some rest," he told Allison. "I'll take first watch." Jack positioned himself by the west window, the direction with the most Krell activity. His rifle rested comfortably in his hands as he settled in. This was familiar territory for him. The waiting, the watching. He had once spent 9 days in a hide on the ice planet Novaris, waiting for a target. His spotter had gone half crazy from the boredom, but Jack had remained perfectly still, perfectly focused. Hours passed. The first of Elysium's moons set, leaving only the smaller one to cast weak light across the landscape. The motion sensors beeped occasionally as Krell moved just at the edge of their range. Near midnight, Allison joined him at the window. "You should be sleeping," Jack said without looking away from his scope. "Winters is stable," she replied. "And I'd never been good at sleeping in combat zones." They sat in silence for a while, the quiet comfortable between them. "How long have you been doing this?" Allison finally asked. 15 years, Jack answered. "Started as regular infantry. Qualified for sniper school after my second tour." "Why?" Jack adjusted his position slightly. "I was good at it. Staying still. Waiting. Most people can't do it." "That's not a why." Jack was quiet for so long that Allison thought he wouldn't answer. But then he spoke, his voice softer than before. "My father hunted. Taught me how to track, how to wait. Said a rushed shot is always a missed shot." Jack paused. "He died waiting for medical transport after a farming accident. 4 hours he waited, perfectly calm. I was there. He just kept telling me to be patient. Help was coming." Allison didn't respond. There was nothing to say. The motion sensors suddenly beeped rapidly. Jack's focus snapped back to the present as he scanned the darkness with his scope. "Movement. All sides," he said. Allison moved to another window. "I see them. At least 30, maybe more." The Krell were emerging from the shadows, their chitinous bodies catching the moonlight. They moved with purpose toward the station, no longer hiding their presence. Jack checked his rifle and took aim at the closest one. "Wake Winters if you can. This is going to get loud." The first Krell reached the cleared area around the station. Jack exhaled slowly and squeezed the trigger. The alien's head exploded in a spray of blue fluid. The night erupted with screeches as the Krell charged. Jack fired again and again, each shot finding its mark. But for every one that fell, 2 more appeared. The first wave had begun, and Jack Miller settled into the familiar rhythm of patience and precision that had kept him alive for 15 years. Dawn broke over Elysium, the alien sun casting long shadows across the blood-stained ground around the relay station. Jack moved from window to window, checking the perimeter. The Krell had retreated an hour ago after their third wave of attacks had failed. 27 confirmed kills, and Jack had only used half a magazine. Each shot had found its mark. He returned to the main room, where Allison was changing Winter's bandages. The young private had woken during the night, even managing to fire a few shots from his position on the floor. "How's he doing?" Jack asked, setting down his rifle to help. "Fevers starting," Allison said. "Infection setting in. I've given him antibiotics." But she didn't need to finish. They both knew what infection meant in field conditions. Winters opened his eyes. "Did we get 'em all, Sarge?" "Not yet," Jack said. "But we made them think twice." Winters smiled weakly. "Never seen anybody shoot like you. Like you've got all the time in the world." Jack shrugged. "Just patience." "My dad was like that," Winters murmured, his eyes drifting closed again. "Always telling me to slow down." Jack watched as the private slipped back into uneasy sleep. He turned to Allison. "Get some rest. I'll keep watch." She shook her head. "I want to check something first. The Krell weren't attacking randomly last night. There was a pattern." Jack followed her to the communications equipment. Allison had repurposed some of the sensors to record the Krell movements. On the small screen, she showed Jack the data. "Look here," she pointed. "They probe, retreat, then probe a different section. They're testing our defenses systematically. Krell don't do that. They're hive instinct creatures. They swarm." Jack studied the pattern. "Something's controlling them. Something smarter. I think it's a queen," Allison said. "In my xenobiology studies, we theorized the Krell might have a central intelligence, but we never found evidence. Until now, maybe." A moan from Winters interrupted them. His condition was worsening faster than expected. Jack checked their medical supplies. "Not enough. We need to try the radio again," he said. Jack worked on the communications array while Allison tended to Winters. After an hour of adjustments, he picked up a weak signal. "Base, this is Sergeant Miller at Relay Station 6. Do you copy?" Static crackled, then a voice broke through. "Miller, this is Command. We thought you were dead." "Not yet," Jack replied. "We have wounded. Need immediate extraction." "Negative on immediate extraction. Krell activity is off the charts. Best we can do is 48 hours. Jack looked at Winters. "The private wouldn't last 48 hours. We need medical drop at minimum. Private Winters has severe infection." "Understood. We'll try for a drop tonight if there's a window." "What's your situation?" "Holding for now. But the Krell are behaving differently. Corporal Gray believes they're being directed by a queen." There was a long pause. "That matches other reports. Stand by." The radio went silent for nearly a minute before the voice returned. "Miller, new orders. If Gray's theory is correct, taking out this queen could disrupt the entire Krell force in your sector. We're sending coordinates of unusual activity 10 clicks east of you. Might be their nest." Jack glanced at Allison, who was listening intently. "You want us to attack? There are only 3 of us, 1 critically wounded." "Negative. Hold position. But if you get a shot at confirming the Queen's location, take it. Could save a lot of lives." The communication ended. Jack sat back, thinking. "They're using us as bait," Allison said. "Maybe," Jack agreed. "Or maybe they really think there's a queen." The motion sensors beeped suddenly. Jack moved to the window. What he saw made his blood run cold. A new type of Krell was approaching. Larger, with a distinctive red crest. Behind it came at least 50 warriors, more than twice the number from the night before. "They brought reinforcements," Jack said calmly, checking his ammunition. "And something new." Allison joined him at the window. "That's a general cast. I've only seen them in preserved specimens. They direct warrior groups." "Still think there's a queen?" "Yes," Allison said firmly. "And if there is, these attacks will keep getting worse until we're overwhelmed." Jack watched the organized approach of the Krell force. For the first time since the siege began, he felt a flicker of doubt. Patience might not be enough this time. The Krell general raised its limbs, and the warriors spread out in perfect formation. Jack took aim at the general's head. The second day of the siege had begun. Jack's shot caught the Krell general between its compound eyes. The large creature collapsed, but instead of causing confusion among the ranks as Jack had hoped, the warrior Krell continued their advance without hesitation. "That's not right," Allison said, firing her own weapon at the approaching aliens. "Kill the leader, the rest should scatter." Jack picked off 2 more warriors before responding. "Maybe there's more than one leader." The Krell hit the station from all sides. Unlike the night before, they moved with clear purpose. Some carried makeshift shields that deflected the humans' first shots. Others threw objects that exploded against the walls, sending cracks through the structure. "They're using tools," Allison said in disbelief. "Krell don't use tools." Jack didn't waste breath answering. He moved from window to window, firing only when he had a clear shot. 15 minutes into the attack, the east wall partially collapsed. 3 Krell warriors rushed through the opening before Jack and Allison could cut them down. In the chaos, no one noticed Winters struggling to sit up. The injured private reached for his sidearm as a 4th Krell entered through the damaged wall. His shot was weak, but caught the alien in a vulnerable spot under its armored head. The Krell shrieked and turned toward him. Jack spun at the sound, saw the danger, and put 3 rounds into the creature's body. It fell just feet from Winters. "Stay down," Jack ordered the private, but when he looked closer, he knew it was too late. Winters had reopened his wound. Blood soaked through the bandages and pooled beneath him. The attack continued for another hour before the Krell suddenly retreated. This time, they took their dead with them, dragging the bodies away from the station. Jack secured what was left of the east wall with furniture, while Allison rushed to help Winters. The private's breathing was shallow, his skin gray. "Jack," Allison called softly. "He's not going to make it." Jack knelt beside the young Marine. Winters opened his eyes briefly, seemed to recognize Jack, and then his gaze went distant. A moment later, his chest stilled. Jack reached out and closed Winters' eyes. He stayed there for a long moment, head bowed. Then he stood and walked to the window, his face revealing nothing. "We'll bury him when it's safe," he said. Allison watched him with concern. "Jack, we can't stay here. The next attack will break through for sure." "I know." Jack checked his ammunition. 2 magazines left for his rifle, plus his sidearm. Not enough. He made a decision. "We need to change the game." "What do you mean?" "The Queen," Jack said. "Command sent coordinates of unusual activity east of here. If you're right about a Queen controlling all this, we need to find it." "That's suicide," Allison argued. "Just the 2 of us against a Krell nest. Better than waiting here to die." Jack began gathering essential supplies. "We'll use the tunnels." Allison followed his gaze to the floor panel near the communications array. All relay stations were connected to maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the surface of the colony. "The Krell will be in the tunnels too," she said. "Probably." Jack moved to the panel and lifted it, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. "But they won't expect us to go deeper into their territory." They spent the next hour preparing. Jack rigged what explosives they had at key points around the station, set to detonate remotely. It wouldn't stop the Krell, but it might slow them down and make them think the humans were still inside. Before leaving, Jack placed Winters' body in a storage locker, the closest thing to a proper burial they could manage. "We'll come back for him," Jack promised. Allison had been reviewing the colony maps on her tablet. "There's an old mining complex near the coordinates Command sent. If the Queen is anywhere, it would be underground." Jack checked his tactical pad one final time. No messages from Command. They were on their own. "Ready?" he asked. Allison nodded, though fear showed clearly in her eyes. Jack descended first into the tunnel, rifle ready. Allison followed, sealing the panel behind them. The dim emergency lighting cast long shadows as they began moving east, deeper into Krell territory. For the first time in his career, Jack wasn't waiting for the enemy to come to him. He was going to them. The maintenance tunnels stretched for miles beneath the colony, connecting the various outposts and facilities. Jack and Allison moved slowly, stopping often to listen. The air grew warmer and more humid the deeper they went. "We're getting close to the mining sector," Allison whispered, checking her tablet. "The coordinates Command sent are just beyond the old processing facility." Jack nodded, his eyes constantly scanning the darkness ahead. They had been lucky so far, encountering only 2 Krell scouts, which Jack had dispatched silently with his combat knife. But their luck wouldn't hold forever. A distant rumble shook dust from the tunnel ceiling. Jack's tactical pad vibrated. He checked it and gave Allison a grim smile. "Our little surprise package just went off. The station is now officially destroyed." "So as far as the Krell know, we died in there," Allison said. "That's the hope." They continued forward until reaching a junction where the clean, manufactured tunnels of the colony met the rough-hewn passages of the mining operation. The miners had broken into natural cave systems, following veins of valuable minerals. Now those caves offered a perfect hiding place for the Krell. Jack paused at the entrance to the mining sector. His instincts told him they were walking into something dangerous. "Stay close," he said. "And if I say run, you run back the way we came. Don't wait for me." Allison looked like she wanted to argue, but simply nodded. The mining tunnels were darker, forcing them to use their low-level light attachments. They passed abandoned equipment, some of it chewed or modified by the Krell. Jack noticed strange markings on the walls, patterns that seemed deliberate rather than random. Allison studied them with interest. Communication signs. The Krell are leaving messages for each other. "Can you read them?" "Not exactly, but the pattern density increases as we go deeper. Whatever's ahead is important to them." The tunnel began to slope downward, taking them further below the surface. The air became noticeably warmer, almost tropical. Strange growths appeared on the walls, organic material that pulsed faintly in the darkness. "Krell nest material," Allison whispered. "It's alive, helps regulate temperature and air quality." Jack kept his rifle ready as they navigated through increasingly biological surroundings. The rock and metal gave way to a substance that felt almost like hardened clay or resin underfoot. They came to a larger chamber where several tunnels converged. Jack signaled for Allison to stop and take cover behind a large piece of mining equipment. From their position, they could see Krell moving through the other passages, warriors carrying materials and what looked like food. "It's like a colony hub," Allison said, "but not the main nest. That must be deeper." Jack was about to respond when he noticed something odd. Some of the Krell were escorting what appeared to be human figures. "Are those?" Allison began. "Colonists," Jack confirmed. "Still alive." The captured humans moved sluggishly, as if drugged. They followed the Krell without resistance, disappearing down one of the far tunnels. "We have to help them," Allison said urgently. Jack held up a hand. "We need to know what we're walking into first. There must be dozens of Krell down here." They waited until the chamber emptied, then quickly crossed to the tunnel where the colonists had been taken. As they moved deeper, the biological elements of their surroundings increased. The walls pulsed with veins of bioluminescent material, providing an eerie blue-green light. The sounds changed too. A low humming vibration filled the air, almost like a massive heartbeat. Jack felt it more than heard it, a rhythm that seemed to press against his skull. Allison grabbed his arm suddenly, pointing ahead. The tunnel widened into an enormous cavern, larger than any natural formation should be. The ceiling rose at least 50 feet above them, supported by massive columns of the same resin material. And there, in the center of the cavern, was something neither of them had ever seen before. A Krell twice the size of the general caste, with an elongated head and multiple limbs. It sat upon a raised platform surrounded by smaller Krell who tended to it constantly. Near the platform were the human colonists, now kneeling in rows. "The Queen," Allison breathed. But Jack was looking at something else. Behind the queen, partially hidden in shadows, stood a figure that was definitely not Krell. "We're not dealing with just the bugs anymore," Jack said quietly. "Look." Allison followed his gaze and her eyes widened. "What is that?" Jack didn't answer. He was already raising his rifle, focusing on the alien queen. One shot. That's all he needed. Years of patience and training focused down to this single moment. His finger tightened on the trigger. Jack's finger paused on the trigger. The shot was perfect. Clear line of sight to the queen's head. No wind. Proper breathing. But he held back. The non-Krell figure had moved closer to the queen, revealing itself more clearly in the bioluminescent light. It stood on two legs like a human but was taller and thinner. Its skin was pale gray and seemed to shimmer like oil on water. The head was elongated with no visible ears and large dark eyes. It wore something that looked like armor or perhaps an environmental suit. "What is that thing?" Allison whispered. "No idea," Jack replied. "But it's talking to the queen somehow." The alien raised a hand, and the queen lowered her massive head. Something passed between them. Information, orders. Jack couldn't tell. But one thing was clear. The queen wasn't in charge. This new species was controlling the Krell. Jack adjusted his aim, targeting the unknown alien instead. If this thing was the real leader, taking it out might be more effective than killing the queen. Before he could take the shot, a noise from behind made him turn. 3 Krell warriors stood in the tunnel, obviously shocked to find humans this deep in their nest. Jack swung his rifle around and fired, dropping 2 of them instantly. The third launched itself at Allison. She fired her sidearm, catching it in the shoulder, but the creature's momentum carried it forward. Jack pivoted and drove his combat knife into the base of the Krell's skull, killing it instantly. But the damage was done. The sound of gunfire echoed through the cavern, and suddenly every Krell was alert. The queen rose up, her enormous body towering above the platform. The gray alien turned its head toward their position, its dark eyes seeming to look directly at Jack. "Run!" Jack shouted, grabbing Allison's arm. They sprinted back the way they had come, the sounds of pursuing Krell growing behind them. Jack tossed a grenade over his shoulder, the explosion shaking the tunnel and buying them precious seconds. They reached the chamber with multiple tunnels, but Krell were pouring in from every direction. Jack fired his rifle in controlled bursts, dropping warriors with precision. Allison backed against him, using her sidearm to cover another approach. "This way," she called, spotting a small side tunnel. They dashed for it, Jack covering their retreat. As they entered the narrower passage, Jack realized with grim certainty that his rifle magazine was empty. He slammed in his last one. 17 rounds left. Then just his sidearm. The side tunnel lit up, which gave Jack hope they were heading back toward the surface. They ran until Allison stumbled, gasping for breath. "Have to rest," she managed. Jack checked behind them. No immediate pursuit, but he could hear Krell in the distance. He activated his tactical pad, trying to map their location. "We're off the main tunnels," he said. "This looks like some kind of air shaft. Might lead to the surface." "Jack," Allison said, her voice serious. "What was that thing with the queen?" "Some kind of alien controller. Never seen anything like it." Jack checked his ammunition again, a habit born from years of combat. "Makes sense now. The Krell never showed this level of intelligence before. They're being directed by something smarter. We need to report this. Command has to know what they're really fighting." Jack nodded. "First, we need to get out of here." They continued up the shaft until it ended at a metal grate. Jack pushed against it, but it was firmly attached. "Stand back," he said, aiming his rifle. The shot echoed loudly in the confined space, but the grate broke free. They emerged into the early evening light of Elysium, near the base of a rocky hill. In the distance, they could see the smoke still rising from the destroyed relay station. "We need to get to high ground," Jack said. "Try to make contact with command." They had only gone a few hundred yards when Allison spotted movement in the gathering darkness. Krell warriors were emerging from hidden tunnels all around them, dozens of them, cutting off any escape route, and leading them was the gray alien, now clearly visible in the fading light. It pointed directly at Jack. The Krell charged from all sides. Jack raised his rifle, knowing it wasn't enough, but he would make every shot count. He always did. As the first wave reached them, something broke inside Jack Miller. 15 years of perfect discipline, perfect patience, perfect control. It all shattered in an instant. A cold rage filled him, unlike anything he had ever felt before. His rifle ran dry. He drew his sidearm. That too was soon empty. Then he was using his knife, his hands, anything he could. The world narrowed to a tunnel of pure violence. It wasn't ammo he had run out of. It was patience. The extraction team found them at dawn. Marine Captain Steve Lewis had led rescue missions before, but nothing prepared him for what he saw as his dropship circled the landing zone. The ground was covered with Krell bodies, dozens of them, torn apart in ways that standard weapons couldn't explain. "God Almighty," his pilot whispered as they sat down. Lewis and his team moved cautiously through the carnage, weapons ready. Near the center of the battlefield, they found what they were looking for. Sergeant Jack Miller sat on a rock, his back straight, rifle across his knees. His uniform was shredded and covered in the blue blood of Krell. Beside him lay Corporal Allison Gray, unconscious but breathing. The sergeant was watching the horizon, as still as a statue. "Sergeant Miller." Lewis approached carefully. Something about the man's eyes wasn't right. Jack turned slowly, his gaze focusing on the captain as if coming back from somewhere far away. "You're late," Jack said, his voice raw. "We came as soon as we could." The Krell suddenly broke off their attack on the main colony, like something called them away. Lewis looked around at the bodies. "I guess we know why now." Medics rushed to help Allison. She had a deep cut on her leg, but no other serious injuries. As they moved her to a stretcher, her eyes fluttered open. She grabbed Lewis's arm. "The gray one," she said urgently. "Did you find it?" "Gray one. Alien. Not Krell. It was controlling them." Lewis shook his head. "We didn't find any other alien types, just Krell." Jack stood up slowly, every movement stiff and pained. "It escaped. Underground. Back to the Queen." The medics tried to examine Jack, but he waved them away. "Take care of her first." "Sir," one of Lewis' Marines called from nearby. "You need to see this." The Marine pointed to a dead Krell warrior unlike any Lewis had seen before. It was larger, with a red crest and specialized limbs. "General Caste," Jack said flatly. "They have warriors, workers, generals, and a queen." Lewis stared at him. "A queen. Command will want to hear about this." "Command knows," Jack said. "We told them days ago." As they boarded the dropship, Jack finally allowed the medics to treat his wounds. His body was a map of cuts, bruises, and what looked like acid burns. The medic shook his head in amazement. "How are you still standing, Sergeant?" Jack didn't answer. He watched through the window as the dropship rose above the killing field. From above, the bodies formed an almost perfect circle, with a clear space at the center where he and Allison had made their stand. At the Colony Medical Center, doctors sedated Allison for surgery on her leg. Before she went under, she grabbed Jack's hand. "You saved us," she said. Jack shook his head slightly. "You were right about everything. The Queen, the controller species, they'll be back." "Not for a while," she smiled weakly. "You scared them." After Allison was taken to surgery, Jack was left alone in an examination room. He sat perfectly still, the way he had been trained to do for hours in sniper school. But inside, something had changed. The perfect control he had maintained for 15 years had broken, revealing something even he hadn't known was there. 2 days later, Jack stood at attention in the colony commander's office. His wounds were bandaged, his uniform replaced, but his eyes still held that strange, distant look. Colonel Laura Peters studied him from across her desk. "Your report makes for interesting reading, Sergeant. This new alien species changes everything about the war." "Yes, Mom. The data Corporal Gray recovered from her tablet will help us locate other queens. We're organizing a special task force to hunt them down." She paused. "I want you to lead it." Jack raised an eyebrow. "With respect, Mom, I'm just a sniper." "You're more than that now. The Krell fear you. Our Marines need someone who knows what we're really fighting." She pushed a datapad across the desk. "These are volunteers, all experienced, waiting for your orders." Jack looked down at the list of names. Good Marines, fighters who wouldn't quit. "The Gray controllers won't be easy to find," he said. "They're smart, patient." Colonel Peters studied him. "And you, Sergeant Miller. I've read your file. 15 years, perfect record. Known for your patience. But something happened out there, didn't it?" Jack met her gaze. "I learned there's a time for patience, ma'am, and a time to let it go." She nodded slowly. "The dropship leaves at 600 tomorrow. Your team will insert near the coordinates of a suspected queen nest." Jack picked up the datapad and tucked it under his arm. "We'll be ready." Outside the office, Jack found Allison waiting, her leg in a brace. She would be joining the task force as their xenobiology expert once she healed. "Well?" she asked.